There are so many different types of rods and reels for bass fishing. It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, just here we have over 20 rods and reels that we use every day when we go bass fishing. But you really don't need that. Today I'm going to share the 5 rods and reels that you should purchase in the order that you should purchase them when it comes to starting bass fishing, or even the 5 or 6 rods and reels that you should have to start tournament fishing as a co-angler or as a boater. Let's get into it.
Boat number 70, Stevie Ray Brave.
Did I tell you guys to catch big fish on these?
Don't believe in that, it's you.
No. All right, guys.
I knew that black and blue would do it.
Is that a bite? Oh, got him. Drop shot queen strikes again. I really wanted to start taking this dream seriously. All right, guys, so there are basically 5 rods and reel setups that you need to be able to do pretty much every technique there is in bass fishing. Now, they're not going to be the ideal rod and reel for each one of these individual techniques. However, you could pretty much cover every single technique with just these 5 rods. And for your guys' convenience, I'm going to go ahead and link all the equipment that I use down in the description so that you can either get some for yourself or see the specs so you can find something along the lines in the brands that you like. All right, so first up, the GOAT. In my opinion, this is the most versatile rod and reel setup that you can get in bass fishing. And let me tell you why. A lot of people start with a medium heavy bait caster. But the thing is like, if you're not just fishing for bass and you're fishing for other stuff, this is a great rod and reel for pretty much any type of fishing, and it's extremely good when it comes to bass fishing. This is a 7-foot medium fast action spinning reel setup, all right? Pretty much anyone can tell you that this is probably the first rod and reel that you should buy. The reason being is because a lot of the techniques in bass fishing can be fished from this rod and reel, all right? So weightless flukes, a wacky rig, drop shots, small Texas rigs, small crankbaits, small jerk baits. They can all be fished from this one rod. Now, I like to use 15-pound braid as my main line, and that way I can change out my leader based on what I'm doing. Right now I have a 12-pound fluorocarbon leader because I'm fishing a wacky rig around heavy, nasty cover. Typically I would fish it with an 8-pound, but for drop shots I do 8 to 10. For wacky rigs, 8 to 12, so on and so on. But you just have to tie on a new leader and you're ready to go. Now, this is a 3,000 size reel. This is the Abu Garcia Revo X reel. It's just one that I prefer. Now, this is the Abu Garcia Veritas medium fast action rod. And like I said, it's just a good all-around rod for a lot of different techniques. You could even throw a lot of your finesse techniques on this rod. So this is definitely the first setup you should buy when it comes to getting started in bass fishing, or if you're diversifying your bass fishing setup, you want to make sure one of these is in your arsenal. Now, the second rod that you should buy is probably what most people start out buying as their first rod, but this is a 7'3" medium heavy fast action rod. All right, this one in particular is the 13 Fishing Omen Black. Unfortunately, they do not make this rod anymore. It's a real shame because it's an excellent rod. If you can find some on the used market, that's how I found this one. It's an absolute killer rod. Now, I have this matched up with a 7:5 to 1 gear ratioed bait casting reel. This is the 13 Fishing Concept A2. Awesome reel. I'm partial to centrifugal brakes, but the reason I went with this speed, this is an in the middle speed, right? Typically your slower gear ratios are in the 5s and 6s, your faster gear ratios are in the 7s and 8s. And this is like right in the middle of that. And the reason being is because you want an all-around reel that you can kind of do anything with. I have this matched with 16-pound fluorocarbon, and basically what I'm using this for is, as you can see, a chatterbait, smaller spinner baits, Pretty much all your different bass lures that require like a little heavier Texas rig or something along those lines. It's also a great jig setup for like skipping docks or something along those lines. Everyone would consider this rod to be the absolute workhorse of bass fishing because it is so versatile in many ways. Now, the one thing why I would say starting with the spin reel versus starting with this is because as you're learning, bait casters kind of do have a learning curve. And like I said, there's just so much more that you can do on pretty much both spectrums with the spinning reel than stepping up into this. All right, and this I wouldn't really fish for anything other than bass with. Like this is, like I said, like most fish have a small, softer mouth. So like I said, with that medium spinning reel setup, you can kind of fish for, you know, panfish, crappie, bluegill, kind of whatever tickles your pickle, if you know what I mean. But as I said before, you cannot go wrong with a 7 foot to 7.3, I would say, medium heavy fast action rod. Like I said, it is the go-to for, or all-purpose, I guess you could say, rod in the fishing industry. So you definitely need one of these in your arsenal. Every bass fisherman I know have multiple of these, just because, like, you know, if you want to fish, you know, a larger jerk bait or a hard jerk bait, just throw a lighter line on this. It's great. Unfortunately, it's not the last rod you'll ever need. As an all-purpose, you can kind of do a little bit of everything. However, just for example, this handles up to 3/8 to 1 ounce. So, and I always suggest staying well below the maximum on the rod, just because when it comes to hook setting, if you have that extra weight on there, it doesn't get that hook set as well as you like. So, which moves us into the third rod that you should have. All right, guys, so the third rod that you should go out and purchase, I would say, is between a 7 foot and a 7.3 heavy action, fast action rod, or a extra fast in this case. I prefer the extra fast in this just because it allows you to do a little bit more in terms of lighter, like a Carolina rig. This is a Abu Garcia 7 foot heavy extra fast. I have it paired with a Abu Garcia 7.3-to-1 Revo SX. Now, the reason I like this reel and this setup is it is a great frogging setup. The 7 foot allows me to get a little bit better with walking the bait across the water. And these giant cranking handles allow me to get a really good grip when I'm trying to rip that fish out of cover with that frog. Now, I have this matched up with 65-pound braid. And like I said, this is going to be more of your heavy cover, frogging, jigging, heavy swim baits, or heavier swim baits, heavier spinner baits kind of setup. And that's going to be your number 3 setup, because when you start getting into flipping and pitching, this also can handle it. It's not the best rod for it, but it can handle the basics of it. Third rod I would purchase, like I said, some all-purpose heavy fast action or extra fast action rod. All right, guys, so the fourth rod I would buy actually steps it back down to the medium heavy fast action category. This is a 7.4 medium heavy fast action rod with a 7.5-to-1, or I would even say you could step it up to a 8.1-to-1 rod. It's going to be lined with fluorocarbon or braid, what have you, but this will be a heavier fluorocarbon setup for your medium heavies. This is going to be for your Carolina rigs, your swim jigs, more of your like heavier weight kind of go through cover in the medium heavy kind of action. All right, so the reason I would say I would probably actually go with braid on this is because typically with swim jigs, or you already have the other Texas rig on the other rod. So if you're fishing around more of like grass, Kissimmee grass, or lily pads, or anything like that, where you're gonna have to yank stuff through the cover or something like that, having that braid helps cut through that cover and all that good stuff. It also gives you a little bit more solid hook set on these big swim jig hooks, which typically that's what I'm using this rod for, but it's a great setup for doing Carolina rigs, like I said, heavier Texas rigs. But the main thing that this is your picking up line quick kind of rod. right? The other one is more, you know, like just all around, all purpose. This is where you want to kind of move things a little quicker, whether it's a buzz bait on the top water, like you want kind of a secondary that just has braid on it to give you a little bit more versatility where you're not going to throw that fluorocarbon, right? I have this paired to a 7.5-to-1. I am more of a fan of the slower gear ratios. I don't have a lot of 8:1-to-1s, but you are absolutely would not be wrong if you stepped it up, because like I said, this is more of a faster moving base kind of setup that you want, while the other one is going to be more for your slower moving baits like jigs, Texas rigs, that kind of stuff, moving baits, right? But that would be the number 4 rod that I would purchase. All right guys, so for the 5th rod and reel setup that I would purchase is going to go back to the heavies, right? This is a 7.6 heavy, and I have it paired with a 7.3-to-1 Abu Garcia Revo X, and this is the favorite Defender rod. Like I said, 7.6 heavy, does 3/8 of an ounce all the way up to a 1.5 ounce. So what this is going to kind of be is your fluorocarbon flipping setup. And right now, like, I also use this for the larger, like this is a 3/4 ounce spinner bait. When it comes to using the heavier stuff, I would really suggest stepping up to that heavier rod. I like to throw, based on the lure weight, I want that lure weight to be in the middle of what that rod can handle. But you can absolutely throw a heavier Texas rig on this, like, or if you're throwing, flipping and pitching around wood, having 20-pound fluorocarbon, I really don't suggest, like, I'm a big proponent of match your line with your rod and reel setups, right? I do not like throwing 20-pound fluorocarbon on a medium heavy rod. It kind of just makes no sense to me. 20 pounds is just kind of overkill in my mind, right? Really, like, unless I'm throwing something that's heavier or around wood or something along those lines, I'm gonna step up to a heavier rod. So like I said, 20-pound fluorocarbon. This is better for like a little bit larger swim baits, like your 6 to 7 inch swim baits. And then, like I said, in the middle of the reel kind of setup. Now, I would suggest for this setup to have a little longer of a handle, because like I said, predominantly what I typically use this for is flipping and pitching a creature bait around wood, right? And it's just so the braid on my other one gets snagged on the wood. This doesn't get snagged as bad. So now this is also a great option for a Carolina rig. Typically when I fish a Carolina rig, I'm using about a 3/4 to a 1 ounce weight. And like I said, when you're trying to move that weight to hook set, having that little bit stiffer of a rod kind of helps so that you don't lose as many fish. All right guys, so once you have those 5 rods, those are the 5 rods I typically take with me when I do tournaments as a co-angler, because I don't have the space to have a lot of rods. But I would start off with those 5 rods, right? Because those 5 rods can cover pretty much every technique there is in bass fishing. Now, are they the perfect setups for every technique? Absolutely not. There are some things that are going to benefit more from having a moderate fast action rod, or, you know, having a longer rod, so on and so on. But if these are the first 5 rods that you guys are purchasing, you'll be able to fish whatever you want to fish. And then once you figure out what you like to do, that is when you start getting into your technique specific kind of stuff. For example, I love flipping and pitching. It is my favorite thing to do. I could do it all day, every day of the year. And down here in Florida, it's always plays for the most part. So for me, you know, I went and got a flipping rod, you know, for my next rod after that. You know, one that is specifically designed for flipping, and that's all I do with it. It has my flipping setup. That's all I do with it. Nothing else gets tied onto this rod, right? And then, you know, also the soft plastic jerk bait or weightless plastics. You know, I got a medium bait casting rod with 12-pound fluorocarbon, 8:1 gear ratio. That is specifically for throwing soft plastics. All right, and it goes on and on and on, you know, with all your different setups between large swim baits, punching, jerk bait rattle trap, cranking rod, There, like I said, the options are endless. But if you start off with those 5 rods, you can crank, you can finesse fish, you can flip and pitch, you can Texas rig, you can jig fish, you can chatterbait, spinnerbait, you name it, you'll be able to do it with those rods and those setups. And then once you figure out what techniques you like, what techniques you are good at, that is when you go out and buy a rod and reel that is specifically for that technique. And that is how I have accumulated so many rods and reels. So once you start out with those 5 rods, then you can branch out and get your technique specific stuff. But always have those 5 rods in your arsenal, because when push comes to shove, or you have to limit how many rods and reels you can take, like I said, those are the 5 I take with me. And they've done me justice. I've had a lot of success with just using those 5 rods. Now, links to all the equipment that I went over today is going to be down in the description. Some of those are affiliate links, so they do help our channel out, you know, if you're interested in the same exact gear that I have. However, you know, if you're just looking for the specs so that you can find something else that is more geared towards what you like, absolutely check those links out. Now, for today's code word for the favorite lit spinning rod and reel combo that we're going to be giving away July 22nd on my birthday, the code word today, we're actually going to be changing it up a little bit. So for the code word, just let us know what your favorite technique is and what rod and reel you would use for that technique. All right, so thank you guys so much for checking this out today. We'll see you in the next one. Now go catch a fish.